Hey everybody. Good morning. It's Tuesday. I don't even know if I know what day it is really. It feels like a Sunday, but it's Tuesday. Hello, I'm back. I'm so sorry that I wasn't here yesterday. I know I try to stay consistent, but I needed a day to be there for my kids. I'm sure we can all appreciate that. And it's tough being a homeschooling parent and being a full-time worker. I'm not gonna lie, and I struggle with it for sure, but let me tell you the things that I did that were really fun yesterday. I cooked a lot with my kids. I went rollerblading a number of times in my neighborhood, and we did some science projects. We're doing some sweet potato starts. We're starting some seeds. We're taking care of our tomato plants and our little garden. So maybe sometime later this week, I'll go ahead and do some videos of that. I also did get my GoPro camera, so I'm going to start doing some live videos from that as well. So lots of fun things happening. But my mom asked me last week how I get my ideas for what I'm gonna cook during the week. And if I haven't heard suggestions from you guys, the answer is I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants and do whatever sort of, whatever sounds good. So it's funny, this week I think that I'm settling solidly into breakfast foods. So we're gonna do English muffins from scratch. This is a 2-part series, so you're gonna see part 1 today and part 2 tomorrow. And then part 2 tomorrow is also going to include teaching you how to poach eggs. So if you've never poached eggs before, it's sort of a miraculous process, like the making ricotta process. It's super fun, easy for kids. I have taught all of my kids how to do it, and they're great at it. And it's also super healthy because the eggs aren't cooked in any sort of fat at all. They're boiled in water or poached in water. So anyway, I'm gonna flip around and get started. Bear with me. I have a Zoom call that just ended with one of my son's teachers. They're amazing. I love them, and it was awesome to see him on there. I have one kid playing outside on his rollerblades. I have one in the room next to me, and then I have another one down the hall. So that's the story of my life. We're gonna, roll with it, right? So the English muffins, if you have never had them, I'm sure most of us have had like Thomas's English muffins. An English muffin is a sort of a cross between a bunch of different things. So it's like a bread, but it's slow fermented bread, so it doesn't rise very much when cooked, and it gets lots of what they say in the commercial nooks and crannies. So I'll teach you how to do that. Okay, and we can work with either yeast or baking soda, so all of you can make this at home. So I'm gonna flip around and get started as always. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Me and my crazy life. You get major points for hanging in here with me because, man, it is not easy. Okay, I'm just fixing that. Lisa, I see you. Hi. All right. Okay. Hello. So, remember, I always save these videos and put them on our Facebook page, so we get lots of viewers throughout the week, which is great. And I'm trying to transition all these videos over to my YouTube channel so that you can access them there as well. And I'm going to start doing really simple tutorials on my Instagram page for V, which are like 2-minute tutorials, like how to peel a tomato or a peach, or how to do a really easy dice on a celery. Those little skills that are incorporated into my daily classes here, but just piecemeal together so that you can always reference those as well. Okay, so as usual with bread, I have 2 different stages here. So we're gonna start with stage 1, which is making the dough. So we're gonna use 1 cup of water. I'm actually gonna switch these guys out. Oh my gosh, this is so fun. And if you haven't made bread before, I would say this is like intermediate bread. Not because it's all that hard, but because it requires a lot of knowledge about fermentation. Okay, so we're fermenting the dough for a long time over the course of a night, so 2 days total. And fermenting just means letting the yeast rise and eat all of the sugars, okay? But slow ferment means that the bread develops a really complex sort of tart flavor, which is why when you eat an English muffin from the store, it tastes a little bit bitter or tart. That's just the way that the yeast taste after they've been fermenting for a long time. And it also, if we don't add any more flour to it, which we won't, by our second rise, it gets really low. It won't rise super high like a normal bread. So we're going to be working with 1 teaspoon of yeast altogether, but we're going to spread it into 2 different bowls. So we're going to do half of a teaspoon of yeast here, and you know I'm not measuring, but you guys can measure at home, okay? If you're not using yeast, use baking soda. Okay. And I'm going to mix this together and add a tablespoon of honey. This is going to be so sticky. Does anybody else get skeeved out by like stickiness of honey? I just washed this bottle and still it persists. You can use regular old sugar here, and you can also use agave. Any sort of natural sugar, please don't use artificial sweeteners because those won't do a thing. The yeast need, hi Ashley, hi Georgia. The yeast needs something to eat, and it's the natural sugars that they eat, okay? So I'm gonna mix all that together. And honestly, I mean, I'm no scientist, but I'll tell you, I'm fairly certain that by the time this bread is ready to be baked, most of that sugar has transitioned into something else because the yeast have been eating it. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of milk. That's about 2 tablespoons. Okay, hold on 1 second. Hey Gabe, can you check on Teague for me?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Hey Hannah, oh, I miss you. Sticky is the worst feeling, I know. Hannah's a chef, so she gets it. Like, you really have to wash your hands in between if I touched anything else and then there's stickiness all over, tackiness, it would drive me nuts and my whole mood would be off, which would make my bread off a little bit. So I've talked about that before, but okay, so you guys can't see my flour bowl, but I'm just gonna measure, it's the dip and sweet method, okay? So I'm gonna measure 1 cup of flour into here. So that goes with the milk, the water, the honey, and the yeast. Then we're gonna do 1 cup of flour into a separate bowl with a 1/4 cup extra, okay? We don't add the salt until phase 2. And that's because the salt can kill the yeast. So with my whisk, I'm gonna whisk together the flour, the water, the honey, the yeast, and the milk. I'm using whole milk. You can use powdered milk. You could use buttermilk, that would be good. You would just use yogurt. And if you don't have yeast, you would just use baking soda, right? Like I said here. And then we're going to add a little bit, the extra half teaspoon of yeast that we didn't use to equal 1 teaspoon altogether. We're gonna add it to the flour here. Okay, now watch, this is super cool. I'm gonna whisk this yeast and flour together. And this is something that you guys, if you're kind of sick of homeschooling, because I'm gonna be honest, I'm totally sick of it. And it's not that my teachers aren't doing an amazing job, they are. It's just that I'm trying to navigate how to homeschool 4 children at once while working, you know, multiple jobs. So to that I say, turn to food science, right? So we just mixed together the flour, there's some lumps, that's fine. And I'm gonna take the rest of this flour mixture and pour it on top. So this is the cool science thing. So you're gonna leave this at room temperature for 2 hours. The cool thing about this is what happens is the yeast will start to rise and make the flour crack on top. So the kids can actually learn how to measure, count time, lots of different math things. So if they take a ruler up to the side or even like a, you know, the handle of the whisk and mark that, say that mixture is halfway up the handle of the whisk, then when we come back in 2 hours, we're gonna see that it's risen higher and we can kind of see, oh, well, that means the yeast are alive and they're eating the honey and they're releasing gases, which makes them, everything expand and grow, okay? The flour on top is there to keep the batter from getting dry. So this is a very old-fashioned, very English sort of technique. Okay, now this bowl is that flour mixture on top of the liquid mixture after 2 hours mixed together. So we're already seeing a lot of holes, a lot of gluten developing, okay? So you can tell because of the strings. And I'm seeing a lot of bubbles. Okay, this is great. This is just what we want. So the next stage is to add a little bit more flour. We're just gonna add up a little bit as we go, okay? So add a little on top, mix together. You're looking for a cohesive dough that you'll be able to roll out onto the countertop, okay? So we don't want it too runny. Now, incidentally, this is exactly the texture you're looking for ciabatta. So if anybody feels like making ciabatta today, you could also do that, but I was deciding on covering that later next week. Okay, so it's starting to stick to the bowl again, so I'm gonna add a little more, and this time also, I'm gonna add my salt and my butter, which I'm going to get, okay? And one more thing before I run off and get that. Hey, Erin, this is called a sponge, okay? So it's a chance for the yeast to get a good sort of rise and mellow out a little bit, and they adapt a little bit of a sourdough flavor as they rise. And I'll take a picture of what that looks like when it's done after 2 hours, but I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab my salt. So what I did is I took some butter and I melted it in the microwave for 30 seconds. Those of you who know me probably know that I didn't own a microwave for like 13 years. So having a new house with a microwave is kind of fun, I'm not gonna lie. I don't do a lot in there, but it's helpful to melt that butter. So I'm gonna mix the salt in first with that extra flour. We wanna make sure that the butter that's melted is not too hot, which is why we did it on 30 seconds, okay? So I can take my whisk and break that up because some of it's not all the way melted. This is a full stick of butter, but that's because I'm doing 2 batches, right? The one I'm doing in front of you and the one I already did that's hanging out there. And then the rest of the butter, so it's 3 tablespoons per batch, and the rest of the butter is for cooking the English muffins. So I'm just gonna eyeball about 3 tablespoons. Thank you all for joining me. We're all in this together. I feel that now more than ever. I mean, each week that passes, I'm struggling, I'm not gonna lie. Work is hard. I'm getting more work all the time, which is great, but it is hard. I really am feeling it. Okay, so a little bit more flour. And we're not looking for that shaggy dough stage like we talk about. We just want the flour to get mostly absorbed by the liquid. And that's perfect. Okay, now, here's the fun part. I'm gonna move some stuff out of the way. I'm gonna get a piece of plastic down on my countertop. And this is why we're talking part 1 and part 2, okay? So part 1 is there we go. Always an adventure. Okay, so I'm going to dump this dough into the center of my plastic wrap. Oh my gosh, it's so well conditioned because of that butter. It's super soft and supple. I love it. So easy to work with. So yes, I said this was an intermediate sort of bread making recipe, but honestly, I don't know. Maybe you guys should just try it and see. It requires very little kneading, which is nice. So what I'm gonna do now, this is super easy, is take another piece of plastic. You can do this with wax paper or parchment as well, guys, okay? I'm gonna let those stick on top. This seems like a gargantuan sort of thing, but Erin and Hannah both know, since they're both chefs, you can get this at Sam's Club or Costco, and this is way stickier than that cheap crap that you buy in a store, like the Reynolds or Saran brands. So the stickier, the better, because what point is there to buy plastic wrap that is not gonna stick, right? So, and I see we have Donnie and Heather and Sabrina. Oh, hi guys. Okay, so I just sort of sealed the edges, and this is because I want to make sure that my dough doesn't try to escape, okay? Next, I'm going to take a rolling pin and gently press it into the center. Wooden rolling pins or marble are the best because they already have a lot of weight, so you don't have to do many extra steps. So we're just going to go from the middle, left and right, not quite to the edges, so leave about an inch of room because this helps keep things exactly square. So now you're going to go in the middle and push this way and this way. And again, don't go all the way to the edges. And we're going to go one more time. There and there. Okay. Oh my gosh, it feels amazing. Now at this stage, this is a very short tutorial today. Aw, I love you guys. So this is about a 1/4 inch thick. And at this stage, I'm going to take those edges that I sealed and fold them in. Okay. And this little beauty is going to go in the refrigerator overnight, okay? So at this stage, you can fold it in half and even fold it in half again if you want. Now it's got yeast in it, so it's gonna grow, okay? But here we go. That's going in the fridge. It's going to have a nice, long, slow fermentation in the coldest part of the fridge. So I'm gonna put it toward the back wall. And that will ensure that it ferments slowly, that the yeast are retarded. So it means that they stop growing as fast as they would if they were at room temperature or in a warm place. And this will also ensure that it doesn't bust out of the plastic. But if you're concerned about the dough busting out of the plastic, we did seal it really well, but you can always put this into a piece of Tupperware with a lid and keep it kind of contained, because cleaning up dough that's busted out in your fridge, in the back of your fridge, is not fun. Okay, so we're gonna love on this dough, we're gonna put it in the fridge, let it hang out overnight, and tomorrow I'm gonna meet you back here and we're going to learn how to cut and cook or bake these English muffins. And while they're baking, I'm gonna show you how to poach eggs. So if there's anything else you wanna see, maybe some homemade hollandaise sauce or something like that, let me know and we might be able to work on that as well. So thank you all for watching. I just love you all so much and I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. I'm gonna go put on my rollerblades and hang out with my kids and say screw work for a little bit and then I'll get back on. So, okay, bye guys, I'll see you later.